David Murathe is the National Vice Chairman of Jubilee Party. He's our guest today. Good morning, Bwana Murathe.
Good morning.
It's been a while.
Yes.
You're keeping well.
I'm officially retired.
Officially retired from what?
From engaging with the day-to-day, up and down, the politics and all that. We went, of course, into the election.
Yes.
I have never internalized it myself. I've never accepted that it was possible because it was not possible. Mathematically, logically, whatever you call it, it was not possible for the other side to win. So when that happened, however it happened, despite the fact that, like, we even went in with the majority numbers, and of course some people very quickly
Shifted.
We tried to figure out exactly what went on. It was not until the other day that our friend Moses Kuria told us how they did it, with a little help from their European friends and the Americans.
Hello?
But that's a story for another day.
Okay.
I think we go to
So
a
for
stage,
that reason, you decided,
we decided
retire.
it's vanity of vanity, all is vanity. And we decided it's not worth it.
Yes.
And the Kenyans get a dose of their own medicine because we told them they didn't want to listen. Now they're busy crying. And we're saying, not yet. They should get a bit more of the same so that next time they...
But you're saying it was not the decision of Kenyans, it was the decision of Europeans and Americans.
Whatever happens, even the US.
So why are we the ones who are
like,
suffering?
There's a lot of people who believe Trump was rigged out because he won all the physical ballots. But all the postal ballots, something
Was
happened.
happening.
So if they can rig out the president of the United States sitting,
Sambuse.
what is Kenya, my
Sambuse,
friend?
okay. So,
Anyway.
City has the proverb. This week's proverbs are from South Sudan.
Yes.
Yes.
Today's proverb. Only a medicine man gets rich by sleeping.
Only a medicine man gets rich by sleeping.
Yes. The rest of you who are not medicine men, you sleep your way to poverty if you want. Yes. But the medicine man can doze away.
Malala.
Doesn't matter.
What's your interpretation of that, David?
That is an interesting one. Yeah, because there are people who still make money without having to work for it. But in this one, they are saying it's only a medicine man because you actually can concoct and people will come to you and they will pay. And so even as you are sleeping and people come to you, they will pay and you can make money. Nobody else can do that. He's like my doctor. And he's like, hey, I've not seen you for a long time.
Well, that's a good thing.
And I'm like, I come because I'm sick. Anyway.
Okay. Now, David, yesterday, the leader of Azimio, Raila Odinga, after a closed-door parliamentary group meeting, which was preceded by a top brass meeting of Azimio, came and said several things. But the bottom line is we are not happy with the outcome of the national dialogue that took place. What's the background of this?
I said it last weekend. I think I was in an interview with some guys from the Daily Nation. And I said, yes, we are unhappy with some aspects of the outcome. Because when we went into this dialogue, there were some fundamentals that we wanted addressed in this. And remember, this was like calming the temperatures for the country. And that is why when the intervention of Ambassador and even some diplomats agreed that Kenya is too precious to ban. And that if you have these mandamanos, demonstrations, and the country is, paralyzed, it was not good for anyone. And remember, Kenya is a hub for this region. And all these organizations, international organizations, the UN agencies, the diplomatic missions, most of them are based in Nairobi. America has the biggest embassy in Africa in Nairobi. So do the British. And a lot of these, activities that happen around the Horn of Africa, they happen from Nairobi. That's why Wilson is the busiest airport. Those guys live here. They take their flights maybe to Somalia, maybe to Djibouti, and come back in the evening. So if they cannot even access the Wilson, then there's a lot of disruption. So when we went into this dialogue, it was to address some of these issues, considering the status of Kenya in the region. So what were the expectations? The expectations primarily for Azimio was the cost of living. Kenyans were hurting, and they expected the government to be sensitive enough and address the issue of the cost of living. Apparently, and I said it before, and I can repeat it again, it is not our business as the opposition to tell the government what to tax and what not to tax. That is their business. It is their agenda. They say they want to do 1, 2, 3, and this is their taxation measures to realize that, to achieve that. And I'm like, fine, then give them rope. Let them hang. There's a lot of disaffection and frustration, and our people are feeling the heat. So even as we address the issues around the cost of living, I think the opposition cannot tell the government, the executive, how to go about their business in terms of taxation and the rest. And if they are not happy, there are ways to redress. For example, this housing thing. People go to court. And if there's a fundamental wrong, the courts will right it. Except in this case, it was a bit ridiculous, where you found a judgment declaring that the housing levy was illegal, unconstitutional. In the same breath, they're telling you, but continue paying it. This is a court telling Kenyans to continue paying
for something that has been declared.
Something they have themselves.
Continue committing an illegality.
So the courts are actually the ones now asking Kenyans to commit
The wording of the court is
illegality. And I'm sure,
the government
actually,
has
this
time
week
to
or
rectify
early next
this.
week, we're going to send teams back to that court and seek interpretation.
Okay. But then, Murathe,
Yes.
like you said, this whole conversation began with the Maandamano, and the Maandamano was several things. Among them, cost of living.
Right.
But there were many other things.
Yes.
There's the Open the Server, the IEBC, political party hygiene, and all those other matters.
Right.
Okay?
Right.
So we get into first round of dialogue, which collapsed. We're going to the second round of dialogue, which both parties agree, let's institutionalize this and make it a parliamentary process.
Right.
Both parties agree on the number of people to sit in the committee.
Right.
Both parties this time agree even on the membership of the committee. Nobody came and said, no, remove so and so.
Right.
Unlike before. They even sit and they go through this whole process, sitting together, welcoming experts, hearing from the public, capturing views. And in the run-up to last weekend, there had been announcements by the co-chairs of this committee, Kalonzo and Ishongwa. We are principally in agreement on all the other matters. The one that we still have a conversation on was cost of living. So by 2 weeks ago, everything else, there was agreement. There was agreement on official opposition leader. There was agreement on prime cabinet secretary, on entrenching these funds into the constitution, on reconstituting the IEBC and its selection panel, on all these other matters. There was agreement. Cost of living was the issue. They meet, they discuss, they call experts, budget experts, finance experts, duty bearers, cabinet treasury for the secretary, cabinet secretary for the treasury, and the others. And then they say, we have reached some sort of a deadlock. We need to consult with our bosses, the principals. Give us more time. After a time, they go back to meet and say, we now have word from our bosses. Let's now thrash this thing out. They come out with a report, stand all of them together and say, Here is our final report. All this is showing concurrence and agreement. At what point does Azimio then disagree?
Well, to begin with, not everybody supported that process, including and primarily the Kenya Kwanza side. The side that was saying this thing cannot work, it's useless, it's a waste of time. On the other hand, there were also skeptics on the Azimio side.
Yeah.
And if you saw the body language, even at that presentation, you could tell who was happy and who was unhappy with the outcome. But having said that, and I think Raila put it very well last night, that we didn't get everything, but it's a start, it's a beginning. And we want to engage in dialogue. I think he's putting country first. And this is the record, the history of Raila. He has always put country first and not about him. When it was Moi's 97 rigging, he agreed to do cooperation with Moi to calm things down. When the 2002 elections, there was betrayal and we won in the referendum, again, he agreed to work with Kibaki. Even with Uhuru, there has been disputed elections. And finally, he agrees to the handshake. And even in this instance, this is more or less like a handshake because it has calmed down the temperatures, people are talking to each other, and people are making movement, and the country is stable, the country is calm. The only undercurrents is the grumbling on the ground. The ground is unhappy.
Which ground?
The people. I've just come from the village.
Yes.
And people can't make ends meet. These cost of living things, including things like increasing fuel, for example, the cost of electricity going up. Somebody was on TV the other day talking about how much his money can buy in terms of a token. All right? And when you are dealing with the cost of energy, the cost of power, the cost of fuel, it affects everything. It has this multiplier for transportation, for manufacturing, and therefore the cost of goods and services becomes impossible for a lot of people. And that is where people are now feeling the heat. I came this morning, there was no traffic. A lot of people have retired their cars at home. And that is the reality on the ground, city. People are now having to cut down. When you go to the supermarket, what used to fill your basket today is like half gone. And it is like these people are insensitive to what is going on.
Who's these people?
The government. You see, some of the revolutions that happen are because the government becomes insensitive. And that is why you find we have gotten to a point where we may not even be the ones now to call for Maandamano or for the revolution. It will be the people. And they will ask us to join them. Before, we were the ones asking them to come out. This time, it will be them asking us to come out. Because we have reached a point where enough is enough. And the government has to balance. These so-called structural adjustment programs, and I watched your Minutes of Finance with you here yesterday, they have never worked anywhere. I saw a senator in the US talking about taxation and saying you can never tax people or tax yourself out of poverty. All right? Why does Dubai work? Because of this impression like Dubai is a duty-free. It is not duty-free. You and I know it's not duty-free. But if you give us a tax rate of, let's say, 5 or 10%, I have no incentive to go and try and bribe people at KPA. But if you make my tax 20%, 35%, plus, say, excise 20%, plus, I don't know, VAT 16%, and that guy comes and tells me, hey, you're supposed to pay 7 million, you can pay 2 million. Bring 1 million. You have saved 4 million. That is the incentive, and that's why you're having all this kind of corruption. And that is why we are saying the tax logic. I like the professor. The good professor was a lot of theory and a lot of hogwash and hot air, actually. The reality is the Bretton Woods institutions are not useful for this country. These Muzungus, the prescription they are giving us, and that's why you're seeing that capital flight for Safaricom shares, for, you look at the boss, what is going on. 42% down. And guess what? Do you know what is happening? These guys are going to bring down all the value of the shares in these companies, all the companies. And when they are down, and our shilling is up, they'll come and buy. And they'll buy all your prized assets. And remember, their dollar now, instead of being 100 bob, is 200 shillings. So the dollar will go further and buy you out. And all these assets will go to those muzungus.
I hear you almost saying, David, as though there's no desire that, all right, that there's a cry. I mean, you'd have to be deaf, dumb, and blind not to be able to see or hear or perceive what the cries of Kenyans are at the moment. But I almost hear you saying as though even through these talks, which was supposed exactly from the beginning to deal with this as the number one issue, that so those talks then were absolutely useless when it came to dealing with that because it hasn't revealed or realized anything. But I also hear you saying that government, with the mechanisms that it has to then be able to deal with these things, has no desire to.
They don't. And if you remember, when COVID came, there were certain interventions by government, by the Uhuru administration, to cushion people, including salaried workers, including the jobless, where they created work in Mtaani, including reducing VAT from 16 to 8 to cushion the vulnerable because COVID was a lockdown. I shudder to think how these guys would have dealt with a situation like COVID if the El Nino, what we are seeing now, is how they are trying to handle. And you see, these guys, incidentally, have always been part and parcel of this government. Ruto transited from a deputy president to the president. When he went to Kasarani, he went in as deputy president. He came out as president. And then you have people telling you about the previous regime. Ishongwa was the chairman of budget for the longest. Duale was a majority leader. These guys, how they transitioned to become the opposition, and the opposition became the government candidate, is amazing, you know? And they crafted this thing in a way that they were able to blindfold people, and people were like in a haze. And today, the people are waking up.
I completely agree with you, David. And that's why I even look at these particular talks, okay?
Yeah.
These are talks in which the opposition said, look, things are not right, and we must have a conversation.
Right.
We must talk. Forced the other guys onto a conversation table. A legal, legitimate process endorsed by Parliament. Not any other that you could come and say, but who are those people who are talking? Well, no. This is a parliamentary process where the opposition and government are told, go sit. Decide, agree on your agenda, agree on the issues to discuss, come to us as Parliament with the way forward. They come out with a report, and immediately after the report, one side of these talks starts pointing fingers at the other side. This was a joint equal number representation committee. Yes. I am sitting here and wondering, where is the sincerity in Azimio releasing us? How many pages was that statement yesterday? So many pages saying, we went there, we tried to do this, we tried to tell them, those guys were stubborn, but you came out with a report and said, this is a joint report. This smacks of insincerity to me, David.
To be fair, the Honorable Mother Karua and Eugenia Wamalwa, who was a member of that team.
Yes.
And our own Secretary General, Jeremiah Kioni.
Yes, who was the head of the technical.
They voiced reservations, all right, about the outcome and the
after
product.
The outcome.
Yes, but remember there's a secretariat.
Yes.
And there's a technical team.
Yes.
And then there's the team,
the summit,
that is negotiating.
Yes.
I think where we are at now, it's not so much about the outcome in terms of the product. It's the how, it's the mechanics, all right? Fine. So we are where we are. Look at the proposals. Create the position of leader of opposition,
Yes.
entrench the prime cabinet secretary. That is dealing with the executive, and it is there in the constitution. Anything that touches on the form of government has to go to the people
Yeah.
To a referendum.
in a referendum.
Yes.
And that is what Jacob was saying yesterday. Fine, it may not be, but let us ask the people what they think, because you have said rightly about parliament.
Mm-hmm.
There are three arms of government: the executive, the legislature, and the National Assembly, plus Senate now.
Arms of government,
Judiciary.
Judiciary,
Yeah.
the
Legislature,
legislature, and the executive.
Yes.
Of the three, it is the legislature which is the most powerful. And both sides, whether you're in government or you're in the opposition, because you make the law
Yes.
and you give the executive the money.
Yes.
The judiciary just interprets the law. And in fact, they want to know what was the intention of parliament when they were passing this law for the judiciary to interpret. Executive executes. And if the parliament says we won't give you money, they don't give you money.
Hold on.
Let's go slowly. The reason I'm saying this is because even this parliament, their power is donated. If you read the constitution, the supremacy in the constitution is
It's with
Wanjiku.
us, the people. Yes.
It is the people.
Yes.
So they go there to represent the people.
Yes.
And that is why, even as you say, there were groups of people who came to bomb us for the dialogue thing. At the end of the day, some of these very fundamental things need to go back to that same
But
Wanjiku
why-
who has given you.
Why the late realization? The report that came out of
Yes.
the National Dialogue Committee
Right?
did not say referendum.
It did not.
It didn't.
And that is one of the problems we are having with it.
The co-chair of this is a senior counsel,
Right?
Kalonzo Musyoka.
Right?
A member of this from the Azimio side
Right?
is a senior counsel
Right?
of Congo Mugen.
Right?
Another member of this
Yes.
is
Jeremiah.
seasoned lawyer.
Jeremiah Kioni.
No.
Even
The-
Wamalwa.
Eugene Omalo.
Right?
These are lawyers.
Right?
It escaped them.
Martha is a lawyer. Kioni is a lawyer.
Mother is Uko at the summit.
Mhm.
Kioni, who is the legal
The head of the
head
technical.
of the legal
Yes.
technical team,
Right?
is a lawyer.
Right?
It escaped them.
They raised
By the
the
time,
issue.
so why isn't it in the report?
It is not in the report because we are looking at the mechanics. First, you give the report to Parliament. And by the way, who tells you Parliament will pass it?
Nobody knows.
But because we know this Parliament, all right, we expect that this Parliament will pass it.
David,
All
there's
right.
something you talk about donation of power.
Yes, by
when we
Wanjiku.
say- yes, donation of power to the legislature to be
Power.
able to do 1, 2, 3 and representation
Right.
of its people.
Yes.
But I keep going back to this, that we do not see that, unfortunately. The representation of people, even if it is on one thing.
Mhm.
And interestingly enough, one of the members here, Opio Wandai, was here, and we said, you know what? You've had this conversation for the last 2 months. We have not heard until the very last kicks of a dying horse moment. We did not hear that the cost of living was brought into the conversation. Really not. Maybe before, but all the days when people were sitting in bombers, they talked about all sorts of other things. But then now we're saying, in order for this thing to go anywhere, we're going to bring in the cost of living. To me, what it looks like is that it's always this little morsel that you dangle and say that, okay, it's the thing that will get us to keep talking. Let's throw in the cost of living and the lives of Kenyans because it looks like it's something that is tasty and people want to snack on. Whereas it could have been discussed over time, and perhaps we would be seeing something like that in the report today.
But that is why you have government, my friend. Government is an enabler. Government is supposed to create an enabling environment for people to have
To thrive.
and to have a good life. And that's why I keep repeating. These guys, when they came to office, they said the coffers were empty. There has never ever been money in a store where you go in to find money. When Kibaki took over, and they have always said they wanted to be like Kibaki, on a wheelchair, when he was being sworn in, he announced free primary education. Children to go to school on Monday. He was sworn in on a Saturday. To go to school on a Monday. 1 million children went to school. He hit the ground running. He knew there was no money. The more economy was 190 billion. There was no money anywhere. All right. And he dealt with it as he moved.
along. Yes.
I saw people wanting to go out there and pay taxes. My own father, I saw him at Times Tower queuing to go and pay tax. All right. Today, and this is the thing you should have asked our good Minister for Treasury yesterday, is how is KRA performing? Are they hitting their target? Or are people becoming ingenious in ways of trying to avoid to pay the taxes because they are not reasonable? And then the other thing, are people having confidence that these taxes that they are raising are going to do the work for which they are designed, or are they going into people's pockets? What with all these scandals that we are hearing every other day? And they're in billions this time, eh? They're not in small hundreds of millions, all right? KNTC is alive, G2G Mafuta is alive, and people are like, okay, we can pay tax as long as we know
where the money is
going and what the tax is going to do for us. And that is why the Kibaki regime worked. He moved it from 190 billion to 700 billion. By the time he left, Kibaki had a 5 trillion economy. By the time he left, Uhuru had a 13 trillion economy. These people were part and parcel of that Uhuru. In fact, Raila has never been a part of the Jubilee administration or the Uhuru government. He just made it possible for
he was just a brother.
to work.
David Murathe is the National Vice Chairman of the Jubilee Party. He is our guest today. Acting National Chairman of the Jubilee Party.
Exactly.
That's better, right?
That's better. By operation of the law. Because the chairman was given a state position. A lot of those leaders in Jubilee took up parastatal and the advisory from the AG, from Musalia, and that is the law anyway. You cannot have a position in a political party
if you're a state officer. Okay.
Just the other day, that Kaninikega faction purported to want to go to court to represent the party. They were thrown out. And it is the court found that the NEC of March 2022, the officials who were elected at that NDC are the bona fide. So Kioni, SG, Murathe vice chair. And Murathe being vice chair, when the chair is not there, Murathe is the acting chair.
Acting chair. Okay.
Party leader is not disputed.
Party leader is not disputed.
Not anymore.
Has never been. Those were shenanigans. Those were games. Look at what they did in Parliament, purporting to create a parallel whip, because we de-whipped Sabina from the Azimio whip. Jubilee Party has always been a parliamentary party. Arama was the whip of the Jubilee Party. So unless they were saying they are replacing Arama with Sabina. And Wetangula was very clever in his ruling. He said nothing in this communication from the chair removes the rights of the minority or the majority. Because in parliament, you're either with the majority or the minority. There's no room for a third party, whether you're parliamentary or not. Wiper is also parliamentary. All right. ANC is parliamentary. Jubilee is parliamentary. But you're either with the majority
or with the
minority. And therefore, and I'm told they are giving her some perks, which is illegal. And I think guys are in court. If I were to give her, like, for example, a GK car as a parliamentary service commission, we're going to surcharge Wetangula. Because the only person who is supposed to have that one is the whip and the deputy whip.
Of the minority and
majority. Minority and majority.
Only.
No
not
other.
Of political parties.
And Wetangula knows this.
So Fort Kenya can't have a whip?
No, they have their own internal whips who whip the members. But and it is the party that determines who the whip is. Okay. In our case, it is the party that will tell Wetangula who is the whip of the parliamentary group in parliament. Not Wetangula picking the Jubilee whip or the Jubilee party. And we are going to deal with all these issues. One of the other things that came out, and you're asking me why we were unhappy with this thing. It was not categorical about multi-party democracy and the interference by the government with the political parties through the registrar of political parties.
But let
me finish, Latif. They have come out with a commission, an independent commission. As opposed to today, when you have one individual
registrar
determining the fate of political parties, who is an officer in the office of the Attorney General. So she's technically a government officer who takes orders from the executive. All right. Now, that is an achievement. And that's why, even as we say this thing was not 100%, I think that is what Raila meant. We made some baby steps towards resolving some of these issues that have been bedeviling us. Let me put it that way. This morning, the Center for Multi-Party Democracy is hosting us, the Jubilee Fraternity, to a seminar, a whole day seminar at the Windsor. And we're going to come out with our own declarations in terms of the dialogue position.
Yeah.
But as of now, we fully associate ourselves with the position taken by Raila Amolo Odinga and Kalonzo Musyoka yesterday on the Azimio position as far as the dialogue is concerned.
And it looks as though that position is that the cost of living must drop. Is that the position? Or are we looking at other things coming into play here when it comes to the end result of these dialogues, of these talks? Something else must happen in order for the report to then be acceptable? And if so, what is that?
Like I told you, this report will go to Parliament. And you know this Parliament will pass it. What we're saying is that sometimes you are looking for 100%. And if you get 60 or 70%, you don't say the glass is half empty. You look at the glass as half full. And then you fight for the other half to fill it up. And we have time. And between now and the next dispensation, we are going to be able to use some of these arguments to bring down this government. We actually don't even believe they won this election. It's like they were not even ready to govern this country. And that is why you are finding a lot of those things that are like clueless, all right? Empty.
When you but David, when you say bring down the government, what does that mean exactly? What are we talking about here? Because it sounds almost...
There comes a time when the people say enough is enough, right? There's so many ways of bringing down a government. One of the ways is civil disobedience, all right? People can simply refuse to pay tax. And that's why I'm saying you should have asked the Minister for Finance, what are his realities? I mean, deliverables. What are his targets and what has he achieved? Because the numbers that we're having is that the KRA, despite all these increments in taxation measures and whatever, has fallen far short of the targets for revenue collection. And the minute that happens, and they grind, of course, they're getting a lot of help from their Muzungu friends. IMF is in town, the World Bank is in town. You saw that Megman, what is her name?
Meg
whatever. They are all over trying to prop up this government.
Why are they propping up a government which was left very healthy, as you say, by Jubilee?
I'm asking you, how was Uhuru able to manage? Uhuru did the biggest infrastructure in this country. More road than all the other four presidents combined. More connectivity in terms of electricity. He was able to bring down VAT. He was able to pay debt. Uhuru never talked about not paying the external debt, right? And the shilling was stable, fuel prices were stable, and he was able to even subsidize when need be, like during COVID. How was he doing it?
Well, to be fair, David, the bulk repayments of the debts accumulated during Uhuru's tenure started after he left office.
Right.
Some of the SGR started at the end of
Uhuru did not complain about paying Kibaki's debts.
Some of the bullet payment for the first Eurobond is coming up next year. All these things. And there are questions being asked on exactly how this debt was acquired and what it was used for.
I spoke to the governor.
The cost of the project.
I spoke to the governor, especially about that Eurobond.
Yes.
This governor was a PS for the Treasury when this Eurobond
was procured.
Was happening. Thuge. Fortunately, the Minister for Finance today was a CBK governor not too long ago. So it's not like these people are strangers to the goings on. The former governor was an IMF, Dr. Njoroge, right? So it's not that people have come from the sky. These are the same people. In fact, you should call Thuge here as a governor of Central Bank, because he was a PS for the Treasury, for him to explain to you that question about the Eurobond, how it was procured, where it went, what it did, and now it's due for repayment. He's the one to pay with his friend Jogona Ndongo. And they should not be trying to tell us at one bullet. Kwani all this time they were not prepared for it? Did they just wake up and realize we need to do a bullet payment for the Eurobond? If you borrow, you have to have a plan of how you're going to.
Was there a plan?
Oh, yes, there was a plan.
Since 2014,
Yes.
when the Ruto administration took this first Eurobond, was there a plan on how it was going to be repaid?
Exactly. Because it
So what
was
was the
not
plan?
supposed to go into consumption. It was going to create, you see the infrastructure you see all around you. These are enablers. Where you go to Nyandarua today and you can bring your milk to the market and your potatoes to the market.
Yes.
All right? These are not tangibles. What he was calling, Ndongo was calling it something that it is not money you see now here.
It is the effects of,
It is a
of the project.
effect. Look at SGR. All right? It was not even Uhuru's project. It was Kebake's project. Some of these things, look at the infrastructure around, which have all stalled. Do you know that? Do you know all the roads that were happening during Uhuru's time, particularly in Mount Kenya, have stalled? I saw Gadhoni Wamushomba complaining the other day that Kera has issued some tenders and that out of the 7 which have gone to Kiambu, 5 are in Kikuyu, Ichongwa's constituency, and 2 went to Ruiru. All the other 12 constituencies have nothing, and there is El Nino. So even as those roads stalled and the condition of the rains have made it worse, they will be telling you how there's no money. They're increasing spending on recurrent and actually reducing on development. Warped logic. What kind of logic is that, my friend?
You know, Mheshimiwa, the truth about governments is, I think it's not often spoken of. Governments are a continuum. Whether it is Kenyatta, Moi, Kibaki, you are always picking up where somebody left.
Good.
Now, the thing that the Uhuru government, that one of the things that I look as one of the good things they did, we had a culture in this country where people wouldn't continue with other people's projects.
Like governors.
They would start their own, MPs and governors.
Even MPs.
Yes. But the Uhuru government continued with projects that had been started, and so many of them to completion.
Right.
And as you correctly put it, many of the people in power now were in that government.
Right.
So when they talk about this government and the previous government, we question it ourselves. What are they talking about?
Exactly.
Because government is government.
Perpetual.
It is government. Now, the question that we often ask ourselves here is this. Yes, there are challenges, but are we seeing a situation where people who are in the position of authority are not adequately equipped to deal with the problems that we have, or are these problems so overwhelming that irrespective of who was in power, whether it was Kibaki or Uhuru, they'll be having the same problem? It's a question we ask. But the question that isn't spoken of,
Yes.
and the question is asked with that Eurobond that we speak of, the monies that we get in this country and we are told are spent, do they go to what they are intended to? Because if they did, then we ought to see the visibility of these things, because it's a lot
6
of
trillion
money.
worth of
Yes.
debt
It's a lot.
in 9
money.
years, David.
You were here with Jimmy Wanjigi,
Yes.
and you talked about the debt register.
Yes.
I heard you repeat it yesterday with the Minister for the Treasury. I think it was you who raised it. Why is it shrouded in mystery? I woke up one morning for Uhuru to say 2 billion shillings are stolen every day. 365 days, that is 760 billion a year.
220.
And coming from the president, it means he has that
Intelligence.
intel
Yeah.
to tell you this is what is happening. Today, And it's sad because we are told there's a lot of micro managing, that even ministers and PSA sometimes are afraid to take decisions without reference to the top. You're finding there's a lot of lethargy in government because they cannot make or take decisions. It's like a one-man show. And that these guys are there just by name. When was the last time you had Aisha Jumwa?
We know she's alive.
Okay.
We know
You asked
she's
a very important question.
yes.
Because you get as good as you. So when you are even picking your cabinet, the result can only be as good as the people you put. I saw Devin D complaining the other day. I don't know whether it is real or it's a fake social media account. But if that is what is coming out of Devin D, you can see the frustration. Because Devin D has also been dealing a lot with the wastage in this government. And you didn't take this minister to task yesterday. Because one of the biggest problems we are having is wastage in government, living large. Huge delegations to go to a small meeting in Europe. You are taking 40 people? How much money? It's that needs to be dealt with.
How can that be dealt with? What is the structural issue here? Because this same kind of wastage, maybe it's more, maybe it's less, has been witnessed in the Kibaki years. There were complaints about wastage. In the Uhuru years, there were complaints about wastage.
Right.
What is the rot? Where is the problem?
The problem is this country is driven actually by the civil servants. And if you joke with them, they can actually bring you down. And that is why,
As a politician,
oh yes, there is a funny marriage between the politicians
and the
and
civil
the
servants.
civil servants. And remember, these civil servants are permanent. In fact, before they used to be called permanent secretaries because they never went anywhere, even if you had a change of government. And they were able to serve any government in power.
Mheshimiwa, they still don't go anywhere. The people we see change are probably PS.
Yes.
You
Everybody just
forget
kind of
that the
oscillates.
engine is
That
below
layer.
the PS.
Okay.
They don't go anywhere.
So until you deal with that one, that answers your question. You will never get rid of this wastage in government.
Because that's
And
how
they create all
the
these
2 billion
facts.
is wasted.
Exactly. Some, of course, is outright. All right.
Theft.
Yes. And
So do I hear you to be saying that when we talk of cartels,
yes,
it's in government?
exactly. In bed with the private sector.
Yes.
Look at the privatization, for example, that they're talking about. Do you know why China has succeeded in removing people out of poverty? It is because the state corporations, the things that work are government. Do you know that? Those companies you see here,
Yes.
They're
they are
government
state
owned.
corporations. But you try and do Mickey Mouse, they hang you.
Yeah.
They don't waste time, right? Here, you're getting government at they're inefficient. Our state corporations are inefficient, so we're going to privatize them. Do you know what that is? Do you know who's going to buy those companies? And for heaven's sake, please tell them not to buy KICC. It is our Eiffel Tower. It is our Statue of Liberty. It is our Big Ben. These are symbols, landmarks for a country. And then you hear is a company in Dubai which has bought KICC. And when you go to Dubai, you find that
It's David Murathe.
it's David Murathe. Please. And that is something we are also going to fight.
The
They
privatization.
remove the law, the requirement that these things have to go to parliament before they are privileged. Now they can just wake up and the then minister, like your minister who was here yesterday, can decide privatizing pipeline. What do I do?
Uhuru started the privatization conversation, appointed a task force,
Yes.
was given a report that said privatize these ones.
Yes,
He didn't actually implement that,
He didn't.
that report.
because he thought you can actually make Mumias efficient. You can make Mohoroni efficient. You can make Chemel efficient. And if the private sector can do it, why can't Mumias Sugar do it?
Okay.
Under
David
good
Murathe,
management.
the acting chairman of Jubilee Party, has been our guest today. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Come again.
And don't take me out of retirement. I've told you.
You are
I'm
retired.
officially
Retired.
A chat with friends is not bad.
Officially retired.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
Tunaingia vijijini, mijini na hata jijini kukuletea taarifa mchana kutwa. Usiku tunaketi kitako, tunadadavua tukichanganua taarifa na makala muhimu yanayokuhusu wewe na familia yako. Ungana na Bernard Ngozi kwenye Open Forum Political Show kuanzia saa 4 usiku hadi dakika zake kila siku ya wiki kwenye Sound Candy Talk. Tukutane Sound Candy Talk.
Sisi vile sio wote ambao wanataka ugomvi kwa sababu ya ugomvi.
Niwaambia nyinyi ni wajinga mkimfuata Ruto. Mkadhani tunawadanganya.
Jeti ya Ruto. Hii maisha ya Ruto ni stress na ni stress.
Mungu, wewe umetukosea.
Sasa tumesema siku ya Jumatano. Uko tayari? Uko tayari? Tumesema sisi si majambazi.